What's up, everybody? Welcome to the In the Game podcast. We got a special episode. I actually just finished recording with Patrick Madden, who's a Big East blogger. So I'm going to be attaching that to this for the audio. But I'm joined by my man, Daniel Lopez. You can catch him on Twitter at @D_Lopez. Daniel, what's going on tonight, buddy?
What's going on, man? Here to talk about some pretty important news that is unfortunate news.
Yeah, very, very, very unfortunate news, man. It's been a wild day. It's been a wild, wild day. So obviously, we learned today that, we're not going to have a baseball season. Well, at least for the foreseeable future. We're not going to have the first,
Canceled at least 6 games.
At least six games. And you told me earlier you think it's going to be a lot longer than that. So what's your initial thoughts on what's going on with the lockout?
So going back to even last season, right, when they said this was a possibility, everyone should have felt some kind of fear that this was going to happen. One, we've seen it before, right? 92 is only about, 20 years ago? I'm bad at math, but about 20 or so years, right? Like, so it's not like it's something that's been so far gone of our lifetime that it's shocking.
Right.
The biggest thing is that there's been more money pumped into the sport in those 20 years than we've probably ever seen in any sport.
Right.
Where, we look at it on the international level, we look at the way just that the baseball platform is set up to not only help those people like on the major league level. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of minor leaguers. We're talking about merchandise for all of that. We're talking billions of dollars being passed around each year. So take into account and add things like sports betting, right, becoming more popular. And my belief is eventually it's going to be in the stadiums.
Right.
These
agree.
things matter, man. So it like the stuff happening today isn't about 2022. It's not even about 2023, 2024. It's really about how can we set up baseball for the next 10 to 20 years, which is why it's taking so long and why the way both I'm not gonna say both sides went about it, because I think the owners have a lot more power in these negotiations than more than the players. So it's rough to watch though.
Yeah, no, it's been brutal, and it's the wildest thing to me, dude, is like, baseball is basically at its highest peak ratings wise, viewership wise, attendance wise, and especially in a pandemic too. They had like the highest attendance they had in like 20 years. And then it's like the owners are like, all right, we're going to hold our ground, and they don't negotiate for months on months. Like they could have negotiated a year ago and they refused to. And now they wait till a week before and they're like, all right, we have this deadline on March 1st. If we don't reach this deadline, we're going to cancel games. And the players are like, all right, they are standing their ground. Like the MLB union, and, you're in law, so, you could speak a lot more to this, but their union is definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest unions in all of America, and they are very united. They voted unanimously on the last proposal. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they are obviously, toes dug in the sand. Like they are not budging. And I don't know if you saw the final proposal that the owners gave them, but I mean, it was barely it wasn't even, it was kind of a slap in the face.
Yeah. And the problem isn't really because you look at the numbers and you automatically think, oh, the owners are moving though. They're moving closer to a side that should count for something.
Right.
What you have to remember is whatever number they're moving closer to, they're making at least 5 times that. Like right. At least I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't mathematically tell you how that works, right? Like you'd have to have the numbers and it's a whole thing. But just in a business sense, right? You don't do things unless you're gonna be profitable to a certain extent, right? And business in general, you don't do anything without at least being 3 times profitable, right? The numbers that they're throwing at the major league players, which by the way, everyone's talking about, billionaires. It has nothing to do with that. This has a lot more to do with the minor league players and the guys that come up before they sign those contracts.
Yep.
Right. Those are the insulting numbers.
Right.
In today's game, I think we've gotten a little bit. We see the Tatis Juniors getting their $450 million deals, and we think that's what's happening. the truth is there's a lot of guys that won't see anywhere near that.
Yep.
And when there are 5 years of arbitration baseball that they might have been a good player but not a great player expire, you're probably not seeing them in the major leagues again, right? Or they'll struggle to get back up there, as we've seen with some players. So this has long lasting effects.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too, and being an A's fan, I can attest to this, is that John Fisher, the owner, worth $3 billion, but he only spends like $30 million, and then he gets like 90 million in revenue sharing. So I mean, the guy's like profiting, like he's running the A's as a business more than he is as like a toy, which a lot of great successful sports franchises are run as. But at the same time, it's like it's costing these players money. We've seen the last like 2 off seasons, maybe even 3, but the 2 off the top of my head were like, guys are going deep into free agency and they're getting like less than, well, I mean, I can't say less than market value because you're only worth what someone's willing to pay you. But, when 16 of the 30 teams aren't willing to pay anybody, like it very much cuts your chances to make money down. And so I'm seeing like the biggest difference is the floor, the salary cap floor that they want. And honestly, that's also dangerous territory, because then you get into a situation like the NBA where you have like average guys making a ton of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that kind of hurts your team from a fan's perspective, because then you get stuck on these bad contracts. And unless you're the Yankees, it's like, all right, dude, we're stuck. We're stuck in mediocrity until this dude's contract is up.
We're at for the owners, right? And this as an A's fan. It's not that the money's not there. The A's are a profitable organization.
Yep.
The Tampa Bay Rays, who have 3 fans a year show up to that ballpark, they're a profitable organization. Yep. There's not one Major League Baseball team that isn't running at a profit and at a high profit, right? Like anyone here who's ever been to a baseball game and paid $16 for an 8-ounce glass of beer, that if you like do the average, it's like 35 cents that you've spent for that beer, because they get it at such great prices at wholesale.
Right.
That, trust me, these people are profitable. We should not be crying about the owners' pennies that they're losing. It's insane.
Yeah.
So you mentioned not having a floor. Part of the stuff that hurts baseball is that, unlike other sports, the minor league system is kind of key to what organizations do.
That's facts. Yep.
And because of that, owners take advantage of that. And they've been taking advantage of it a lot more recently, because younger players have been better and more prepared to come into the major leagues than in the past. So what we're seeing right now is the game is at its youngest it's ever been, where when you're 30 to after your age 30 year, if you're not at least a borderline all-star player, your contract's not going to be worth shit.
Yep.
And odds are, if you're below average player, you're out of the league within 2 years.
Yep.
Right. So right now, Major League Baseball owners are profiting and they're killing that. Right. Look at Max Muncy. Like Max Muncy went from the A's, who they weren't paying him a lot. He was a minor league player.
Yep.
Goes to the A's. Goes to the Dodgers. Dodgers weren't paying him a lot. He was a minor league player. He gets a deal that no matter how much they pay him, unless they do some ridiculous amount, he's going to be underpaid for his career.
Yep.
For the production he put out there. Like, there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's the other thing too, is like the whole MLB clock thing. Like MLB teams, they hold guys back until they're like 22, 23, and then they have 6 years of arbitration control. So by the time these guys hit, the unrestricted free agent market, they're like 29, 30 years old, and they only have 1 contract.
Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah. Like, it's a very small percentage of guys, and I don't think people understand that. Like, they're not fighting for the Garrett Coles of the world or the Max. Oh my God,
Max Scherzer's making 45 mil per year. Yeah.
This is like the average guy, dude. Like the 99%, and that's really that's something that, as a person, as like a human being, like I actually like truly respect of these like millionaires, the top 1%, because that's where we see in other leagues, the MLB, the NBA, where there's a separation of players, because it's like you have the guys that are making a ton of money and they're like, dude, I just want to fucking play and make my money, know, and they don't really care about anybody else. But baseball is a lot different. That's why they have a very strong union. But
baseball's almost like a cult following, right? Where it doesn't run like you mentioned, it doesn't run exactly like other sports. And a lot of it is because, I think out of football, NBA, NHL, maybe not NHL, but baseball has one of the most like traditional, like historic kind of That's why people play,
Right.
right? That's who they're chasing. They're chasing the grades. I think I see that a lot in hockey. Not that I watch a lot of hockey, but it's the only other sport that I really see that, right? Basketball, you talk about like, LeBron, Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but that's a whole separate level.
Right.
With baseball, it's about all of them. It's about you know, we're gonna talk about Phil Koch 20 years from now when your average person doesn't know who Phil Koch is,
Right.
but your lefty coming from JUCO is gonna know exactly who Phil Koch is, right? It just has that kind of like familiarity to it. So it is a little bit different because of that.
I want to ask you, because you have obviously a legal background. Like, what's the next step here? Like, we heard a lot of like bringing arbitrators in, and we also seen it in the '94 strike where the owners were kind of like, okay, we're gonna bring in replacement players.
Yeah.
And then that's when they kind of brought arbitrators in to kind of negotiate. Like, what do you think that the next step is, like, from a legal perspective?
You got to get closer. That's flat out. You have to get closer. One of the things that, so one of the red flags that I saw early on, like not early on, like when these negotiations were happening, was they wanted to bring in a federal mediator
Yeah.
pretty much off the bat.
Right.
That is the worst possible move because it shows bad faith,
Right.
right? You don't even have an offer on the table yet. What are we mediating, right? What are we going to talk about? What are we going to negotiate here when we don't even know what one side is bringing to the table? It just didn't make sense. And the thing is, and the truth is, MLB owners and their lawyers and the people they hired, God bless them or whoever they are, they played this in a world where social media isn't what it is today.
Right.
If this was 1992 and you put out there in the news where you can show more of the media and say, hey, the MLB owners are just trying to mediate this. They want to come closer to this, right? They're trying to do all these things to talk to the players, but the players aren't cooperating. The players are really greedy. In today's social media age, that doesn't work,
Yep.
right? We all know that we're going to have opinions. The players are going to come out, clear the story. We have 3 to 4 reporters that as soon as they hear something, it's on Twitter,
Yep.
right? You just don't have that kind of gamesmanship in the legal part of it,
Yeah.
right? So the next step here is they have to get closer. They have to make a legitimate effort to get closer. And what I see from the players is they see how the game's being played and they're not falling for it, right? They're not going to fall for, hey, maybe the fans might not like us. Maybe the fans might not come here and root for us. Like, they know that's not the case, right? So the best thing that's happened for the players is social media. And it's hurting the owners and it's hurting the perception of the owners. Because honestly, not for nothing, I hate Rob Manfred as a human being. And as I think he's a pretty shit attorney if he even went with this kind of crap. But like, but it's hurting the game. And honestly,
Yeah.
you're wasting more dollars on this bullshit than finding a resolution that makes your game more profitable. Which you mentioned last year, the numbers are up in every category, even that young category of like 18 to 25, which has traditionally been dropping in the last like 2 decades. Even that went up. So you had an opportunity to just double down, make this, add on top of last season, and instead all that like momentum, you're kind of just crushing it.
Yep. So the thing that they're like basically the furthest apart on is obviously the arbitration pool, which is like they're very far off on, like they're not even close. And then the owners want like a 14-team playoff. And I think is like general fans are like, dude, 14 team, like we play a 162 game season for 14 teams to make the playoffs. Like, what's the point of like half these games then, dude?
Yeah. And look, baseball season is so long that regular season games are watered down as they are, right? We talk about it all the time where baseball is hard to gauge who really is the best players because it's the sport that you can inflate stats the most. And by that, I don't mean like you go out there and you score like extra touchdowns, right, in the NFL.
Right.
It's just like you play more average to below average competition because there's so many games that you kind of just these bodies out there sometimes.
Yep.
So, everyone in the AL West last year when Texas was using their 88th reliever out of the bullpen, right? And they were able to hit, get at bats against them, those numbers went up, right?
Yeah.
So baseball season's long enough, right? I think if you're a baseball fan, you love baseball, but you also know there's some games that we can do without.
I think that's the dangerous part about 14-team playoff too, is that, a team like the Yankees, for example, who normally spend north of $200 million a year, they're like, okay, we can make the playoffs winning 79 games, so we don't have to spend that much money.
Right. And I think the best example is, and this is something that you touched on the SAW page, is with the NFL, we saw the 7th seed be garbage, right? Who was this? The Eagles, they got trampled, right? They made the playoffs as the last seed there. You can tell they didn't belong.
Yep.
Same thing on the AFC. I don't even remember who that last person on the AFC was, but I know they also got crushed. And baseball's kind of heading that way too, where we're kind of changing the dynamics of what we see baseball being played as, right? Because the wild card game, it's awesome, but let's be honest, it doesn't really show what your team has done throughout the season, right? Because baseball is played by series.
Right.
So you bring it down to one game, it's super exciting. It makes people want to watch, but if you keep watering it down like that, eventually it loses its value. You know, you still want value. As exciting as it is, you still want to have that value to it.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, you and I, whether online or not, but I always say, like, baseball is the one sport where, like, the regular season champion to me means as much as the World Series champion, because to have the best record throughout 162 games is very difficult, dude. Like,
absolutely.
Because, I mean, especially nowadays, like, look at the Dodgers last year. They lost like half their starting rotation throughout the entire season. You know what I mean? Like, and the fact that they were able to still be in the playoffs, I mean, that tells you that organization has incredible depth. Like, they just have great players. But, 14 teams in the playoffs, you can get in there. And MLB playoffs, Daniel, you know this too. Like, anything can happen. It's like the one sport where, like, the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs. It's just the team that's the hottest. A variety of things, the healthiest, the hottest. But we don't see that in other sports, really. You don't see the best team in the NBA lose in the first round. Whereas, like, baseball, we do see that all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't want the game to be ruined with 14 teams, dude. And I think the players see that too. They don't want it. So where are they going to – but where are the players going to give in the CBA?
So that's the really hard part, right? Because you listen to the players, and especially like Anthony Rizzo not too long ago, he said, like, this is about the future generations of
that was a
players.
great tweet.
Yeah, and that can mean a lot of things, right? One, we know that minor league teams have been getting cut, right? Last year they cut a shit ton. This year they want to do the same. They want to cut it even further. So you bring up the playoff question and bringing it to 14 games. One, that's half the league. You're telling me that half the league makes the playoffs. There's 30 MLB teams. 14 of those is essentially half of them, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty much.
I think that's a great thing that baseball's always had too, is like it's always been a select number of teams, division winners and one wild card. You know, now it's 2 wild cards. I would like to see an extended wild card, 3 games. I don't like the 1 game playoff, but it is what it is. But I don't want to see it watered down, dude. Like, I don't want to see the Kansas City Royals get in the playoffs with 75 wins because they play in a fucking shitty division. Sorry, excuse my language. But, like, I don't want to see that, dude. Like, as a fan of the game.
I don't think anyone wants to see that, right? Like, part of growing the game isn't to put a watered down version of it out there, right? Playoff baseball is amazing.
Yeah.
You watch October baseball, and some of the most exciting stuff in sports. Honestly, I'd rather watch a MLB playoff game than some of the other playoff games, just because they're like you mentioned, there is so many different things that can happen. They usually end up happening.
Yep.
Right. I think the one thing that I've come around in recent years that we originally disagreed on was the best team doesn't necessarily win. Yep. There is so many factors to it that, you know, timing matters so much. What I don't like about the playoff expanding and what they want to do with it is, the first thing, the proposals are a little bit too, like, wonky, right? Like, the whole thing about the first team gets to choose who they want to play from the other wildcards. I think that's stupid.
Hey,
right?
remember that movie Basketball?
I do remember baseball. Yeah,
and then like, dude, they have the playoff picture. Dude, that's what it reminds me of. This team plays this team, and if they win, they play. It's like, dude, come on, man. What are we doing here?
We don't need all that, right? Yeah. Like, I think if you respect yourself as a manager, you're not gonna go out there and say, oh, we want to play this team because you think they fucking suck, right? Like that's not what they're gonna be saying.
Plus, that's motivation for the other team too.
Yeah, like, I get the hype around it, right? It's very WWE, right? Call out your person.
Very WWE. I like that, dude.
go fight them in the ring. But the truth is, though, like, from a baseball standpoint, right, and just from a who should play who standpoint, I like the fact that the regular season means something. I don't
Yeah,
want the regular season not to mean something. I think the one thing I don't like about the NBA is I feel like the regular season really doesn't matter,
doesn't, dude.
right?
It's
Like you watch a lot more basketball than I do, and I think like we could agree on that. The regular season is kind of just like maybe a surprise team gets in, but even then they're bounced after the first round,
yep.
right? Like with baseball, you have your heavy hitters, right? You have a team like the Nationals that won the last time we had a full season. No one expected them to win. They came out of nowhere. But you can't sit down and break it down and not make sense of it.
Well, the Braves won last year.
And
That was a
and
full
the Braves
season.
won last year. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which was
But
I guess was a full season. I was thinking like pre-pandemic.
I mean,
But
like going to the best team. Like if the Dodgers were fully healthy, you think the Braves actually beat them in 7 games? Like
it's hard to say. It's hard to
likely
say,
not.
right?
But I mean, like very
Yeah,
likely not.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you also think the Braves have full health, right? They have Ronald Acuna Jr. They have
That's
Mike
true. Good
Soroka.
point.
So
Good point.
there's always things to there's a lot of nuance which I like about baseball.
Yeah.
It is a big nuance sport.
Great point.
So I don't want to add more stuff to it, right? Like I like this. I like the fact that storylines happen because of the situation we're in. I don't want to go in there and add more storylines, right? Because eventually it cheapens the game to me.
Yeah.
Like 14 playoff game 14 playoff teams is way too much in my opinion. Like I'm trying to think of who else would get in last year. So
Well, it would
Toronto
have
got in
been
through a wild card, so that
the
would
A's
have
would
been
have been
cool.
in, so that would have been dope.
Yeah, that would have been dope for Oakland, right? The poor Oakland team that makes no money. Um, but like yeah, so I don't know. At some point you have to draw the line, and the way we're heading, it's like, yo, why don't we just all play a 30 team tournament?
Yeah,
See
dude,
who
you
really
might as
gets, right?
well,
Like,
dude. And then what's the point
yeah,
of a regular season at that point? Like that's the thing, like you've been alluding to, like there what's the point of a regular season if half the teams get in? I think that's
yeah,
the biggest issue. Um I think one thing we do agree on with the players though is that these teams there should be like at least some kind of salary floor, right?
yeah.
We do agree with that. Like I know as a Yankees fan you'd love to see the Orioles continue to suck because that's
Not really, man. Look,
17 easy wins.
I'm a Yankee fan, right? But more than that, I'm a baseball fan. I want to see good baseball,
Yeah.
right? Like right now, I'm the world's angriest Yankee fan because the Yankees have been playing terrible baseball as far as what they put on the field for the last since Boone's been there, and maybe even before that. They've played a terrible brand of baseball, right? And
Yeah.
what I see is a lot of teams copying that. You know, very famously, like Moneyball came out in 2022, and for better or for worse, it changed the way that people thought about the game. It changed the way people got jobs in the MLB. It changed what people were going for when they were applying for those jobs. Where right now, if you are any good at math, or if you have a background in data analysis, stuff like that, you're more likely to get a major league job than if you've been coaching baseball at a very high level for the last 20 years. It's just the way it works, right? So for better for worse, that's where we're at.
Yeah, but
The
Daniel,
problem. Oh, sorry, go for it.
women lie. Numbers never lie, dude.
So this is why I
Especially in
disagree.
baseball.
And as a lawyer, this is my favorite part. It's not the numbers lie. Numbers can tell you a different story based on the perception you have of them, right? So numbers,
True.
in my opinion, numbers need context because it's very easy to throw out numbers and say, okay, this person's better, or this is why this is happening, without necessarily breaking down how it happened. And in baseball specifically, what I see people getting in trouble with, right, is all the numbers line up, and then what the result that they want doesn't happen, and they like, what, I don't know why, what happened. The numbers were there, right? Like one of the books I read the last couple of years was Astro Ball, and Astros won the World Series in 2017. Their big thing was their athletic department and how they changed that. They were talking about how, and I forgot the guy's name, but he was like their main scout at that point. He came from like a big tech background and stuff like that. They went out to scout baseball players in college, right? And they went and they saw this dude. He had unbelievable numbers. Every metric you would want as far as his on base, his strike, everything you could calculate on the college level. Because obviously you have some restrictions, right? You don't have the same technology, but
Yeah.
everything you can calculate on the college level, this dude killed it at, right? Just amazing. This dude didn't even last a year in the minors,
Who was
right?
that again?
I forgot his name, but it's in the book Astro Ball.
An
And then
Astro Ball
yeah, yeah.
or Money Ball.
No, Astro Ball, Astro Ball. This is about the the 2017 Astro team and how they got there and stuff like that.
Was that first baseman?
I don't know. He didn't make it very far in his career, but the point is that scout was saying how they should draft that guy in front of, I think, Joe Kelly at that point, which at that, Joe Kelly was a surefire first rounder that year. And it was talking about
Oh,
how,
you mean Mark Apple?
no. This is the guy they drafted. He was drafted late. So the Astros ended up
Okay.
not drafting him. He's a not notable person. Like I even forgot his name, but he's like not notable. He had that short of a career. But the point was that like the numbers were what they were because of who he was playing, right? The production was different in college that could have translated to MLB.
For sure.
So all I'm saying with that is it's like different things happen in an MLB ball game, right?
Right.
A guy can hit a dribbler off his hands during a shift that just lands a little bit past their baseman. That's a double, and now his OPS goes through the roof. A guy can hit, and we talked about the shift a little bit today.
Yeah.
A guy can hit a 120 mile per hour line drive to the hole between first base and second base. That's the world's loudest out, and now that person is devalued, even though he made so much better contact than the guy who fisted a ball down the third base line.
Yep.
You look at the numbers, you're going to take that guy who dribbled it down the third base line every time.
Right.
Now, you might say that it might average out, and I'm sure it does to a certain point, right? I'm not saying that everything is unique, but I think what we've seen is nuance matters, right? There's a reason why the Yankees struggle in the postseason. It has nothing to do with their talent. It has to do with their approach, right? You give me that lineup and you change their approach a little bit, you have a different team. You look at a team differently. Even the Dodgers, they have their lineup. They're at their best when they're not searching for those big numbers. They're the best when they're just playing baseball.
Right.
And we don't see that throughout 162 anymore. But it's because of, and this ties back to Moneyball. In Moneyball, we saw that we can look for things that we can pull out and buy that for cheap.
Right.
And then run away with whatever, because we can get that kind of production, right? I think their whole line was, we get Jeremy Giambi, David Justice, and some other dude, and I think Scott Hasberg to produce like Jason Giambi did.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about finding value at the end of the day.
It is. No, you want to find value. And here's the thing: I'm not against Moneyball, right? Like, I'm not against making your team the best that you can. And if you have to, and you can't save money on it, you should, right? Like, I think so. That's where the discrepancy comes in, right? Corey Seager just got paid $325 million.
Right.
How many shortstops are there in the major league that can produce at that level, if not better?
I mean, the thing is, though, is that Corey Seager's done it at the highest level in the playoffs.
Sure.
He's shown that he can perform in the bright lights. And I think that's the biggest difference, dude, is we see a lot of these guys in the regular season, they're great, dude. But then when like push comes to shove in the postseason, when the lights are bright and they shrink up when pitchers aren't throwing balls, you know what I mean? When every pitch matters in the postseason, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different.
You're absolutely right on that.
And I think that's the biggest difference, is because like a team like the A's, like they continuously let dudes walk, or they trade them away before they're eligible for their unrestricted free agency to get unknown commodities, and you recycle. And then the fan base, like at the same time, is like, okay, like, we got Ryan Sweeney out here, and we got who the fuck knows today. Yeah. It's just different. It's hard to build and establish a fan base to young kids, dude, who have to continuously buy new jerseys because they don't.
Right.
Their favorite player leaves their favorite team, and it's just a bad look on Major League Baseball all around. We have too many of those teams. If we had one or two or three, okay, that's cool. But we got the Pirates, the A's, the Rays too. Like, we could throw them out there. I know they've been good the last couple of years, but they're in the same position. The Orioles, just too many, dude. And like, at some point, they got to fix it.
I think the bigger problem is that right now, and this happens in the NFL a lot, where they cycle through how much they're willing to invest on a team based on if they feel they have a quarterback or not, right? So it's all about like is your quarterback good for the next 5 years? That kind of thing that you're looking for. Baseball doesn't have that, but baseball acts like it does, right? So I know, for instance, and I lived through this like recently with the Yankees when they had, Judge, Severino, Gary. all these guys come up at the same time, and the thinking was, oh, this is awesome. This is our core for the next, whatever years. We can spend money on something. Granted, the Yankees always spend money, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But you mentioned a team like the A's. It always feels like they're waiting for one guy to just be the next Mike Trout or be the next Ricky Henderson, right?
Well, that's difficult to find, dude.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, when we have this guy that we can afford to pay, then we'll build around him and try to win. And teams do that, and it doesn't always work out, right? Like the Astros got lucky, but the Astros also had like 10 like top 5 picks for the last 10 years.
I think the biggest issue, and that's a great point that you bring into the Astros, is because the same philosophy was applied to the Royals.
Yeah.
And then when you see the Royals do it and the Astros, it's like, okay, that's a winning formula.
Yeah.
Like, we need to get young guys, and they're going to grow up in the system together. They're going to learn how to win together, so they win at the minor league level. Like, Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, they won together in AAA. They won their AAA, the PCL, and then they go up into the major league. So, like, that's what these teams are trying to do. But it's like you still need to add things to that.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, I think one of the biggest misconceptions in the last, like, since the 1990s was that Yankees dynasty, right? From 96 to 2000 or whatever it was. People always said, oh, they bought those championships, right? They brought over Roger Clemens. They brought over David Wells. They brought over, all these other pieces, right? An older Don Mattingly, older like Wade Boggs and stuff like that. And while that is true, look at the core pieces there. All those guys came up from the Yankee system.
Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill.
Well, Paul O'Neill came from Cincinnati, but Williams, Posada, Jeter, Mariano, Andy Pettitte, those 5 guys, like, they were the core of that team, right? And everyone else around them, they weren't really at their prime. Paul O'Neill was at his prime. Tino Martinez was at his prime, but he was undervalued because he was coming from Seattle, right? So they put those pieces around them, but they had those pieces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, that's the misconception of, like, oh, Yankees just paid for those championships.
But Yankees do just pay.
Yeah. When the Yankees started paying the money, though, like, right, when they went after Jason Giambi, when they went after Mike Messina,
they stopped
those
winning.
Teams sucked.
Yeah,
those teams sucked.
That's why I always say, like, dude, I don't think baseball. I am all for not having a salary cap in any sport, dude, because I believe fair market value should be attributed. Like, in the NBA, at one point, Mike Conley was making more money than LeBron James. Like,
yeah.
In no other universe does that ever happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that hinders a team. That hindered the Grizzlies at the time. So I think that fair market value is real, and like if the Yankees want to go out and spend $400 million, cool, let them go up and spend $400 million, because last time they did it, it didn't work.
Exactly. And look, I agree with you 100%. My thing is with that, like with the salary cap, is we have to remember baseball is a very different sport, just because you are winning with guys that aren't even going to be on that final roster, right? Like your minor league players, they're gonna contribute at some point. We mentioned the Dodgers and how good they are.
Yep.
People don't understand, like, unless you're in baseball, you don't understand how much they invest in those minor leaguers. Like, you can make fun of the Dodgers, you can hate the Dodgers, but nobody invests in their minor leaguers and into their system like the Dodgers do. That's why when their guys get to the major league level, they're not playing catch up. They're just doing exactly what they did in the minor leagues and just continue with that, right? Like, what's the dude from Jeter Downs, who got traded from Boston. Got traded from the Dodgers to Boston. He struggled last year. Yep. He struggled in his last year with Boston. And I came out and I said, look, this dude doesn't have that kind of talent to supersede that.
Right.
But you know what happens, though? When you have so much information that you have to literally just not do anything to fail, it's easy to look good, right? So, like, whenever you're trading, like, whenever teams are trading for Dodger prospects, I'm always like, I'm not saying they're not talented. I'm just saying their numbers are way more inflated than if they played another minor league system.
The A's traded for that kid, Gerald Cotton, and that dude's, I don't even think he's in the league anymore. Dude.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, dude. I was so stoked on that, too. I was like, oh, and then his first game with the A's in the minor leagues, he threw a no-hitter, and then, dude, done after that, bro.
Yeah. There's so many stories of, like, what could have been with minor leaguers who, like, put up great numbers and they come to major leagues. It's like, just not there. For me, like, the biggest thing is, like, Manaea never became what I thought he was going to become. And obviously he still has time, but, like, he's been my biggest disappointment from like watching the A's. AJ Puck, man, he's another guy who I thought was gonna come in and absolutely just throw hammers.
Oh.
Jesus Lazardo, another. So I don't know, man. It's hard. Like, and I know this is like an A's talk conversation, but
Well, I mean,
like
the A's
it's
develop
hard.
pitchers very well, dude. Like
They do.
they get who was that? Who was that dude they got last year? Oh my
You
god,
talk Frankie.
the lefty. Oh my god, they like traded for him for cash considerations from the fucking Phillies, dude. What the? Why is his name just going beyond me? He was the A's fifth starter last year, but he was decent pretty much the whole year. Like he held his own. You know what I mean? Like he had a around like 3.75, like 4.15
Which is
ERA.
for a fifth spot starter. That's perfect.
Yeah, and it's like the A's always seem to find those kind of guys. Pitching isn't the issue. It's
No,
really
it's
with
not.
hitters with them, dude. Is like they find guys like Josh Donaldson and then they trade him and then he wins
Yeah.
an MVP. You know what I mean? And then Carlos Gonzalez, dude, they got him
Fargo,
and
yeah.
then traded him away for what's his face, the fucking big headed dude from Colorado. Oh my,
Matt Holliday.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yo, so like I'm glad you bring up Cargo because I think he's the best example of what major leaguers are trying to fight for today. You can't tell me that even after Cargo struggled, because he did struggle, right? After he was an all-star for consecutive years,
yep,
then he came back and he just hit a wall. You can't tell me that he can't be as productive as some of the guys that we have out there in today's game who are purposely getting underpaid,
yeah.
right?
I think the one thing with Cargo though is like what made him special was his athleticism, his
yeah,
speed. Like he was a five tool guy, and then once he like kind of lost a lot of that because he was hurt a lot. You know what I mean?
he lost a few steps and really quickly.
And then once you lose that at that as that kind of player, and then especially hitting in Coors Field is like your numbers are inflated already.
Yeah,
We saw it with Nolan Arenado this year,
yeah.
power numbers way down. So it's like it is a little tough. But I agree with you, dude. He could probably still be a productive major league player for sure. And that
The reason why he's not is because he won't settle for a smaller contract
yep.
than what that would be, and he shouldn't settle for. This dude still puts butts in seats, right? And I think that's another point that the MLB owners are missing out on.
Yeah.
If you invest in your team, you're
You'll
gonna
get
have
people in the
fans
seats.
invest in your team.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you mentioned the A's problem, man. Like it's true. Like what jersey can you buy for the A's that you expect to be there? Matt Olson's being talked about being traded. Matt Chapman's probably not too far behind if he gets traded, right?
Yep.
So now what do you buy? Sean Murphy, right? And hope that he sticks around for 5 years.
Probably or Chris Bassett.
Yeah,
And Bassett's and like he could be traded too, dude. Like you don't.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like and like I'm not saying that there's like an easy solution to it.
Yeah, there's not.
My thing is, I just think because the owners are such business minded as they are, and they're kind of these guys are like profit first, like above anything kind of minded,
Right.
which is fine. You're running a business, but you have to think long term. And I think these guys don't necessarily do think long term, or if they do think long term, they're trying to take advantage of so much of it that they're kind of losing how profitable they ultimately can be, right? Like I don't know, man. Like you tell me, Matt Olson's gonna be on the A's for the next 10 years. You tell me he's gonna retire in A. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Like right, like you just have to be.
Yeah.
You see him get better every year. He's a guy that deserves to be there. He's done nothing that makes me think he shouldn't be there.
And Daniel, that goes beyond just like these 10 years. It goes generations. Because as an A's fan, it's like really. As an A's fan, who do I hang on to is Ricky Henderson. Like he's Mr. Oakland A. You know what I mean? And it's like you can push that as a team for centuries. It's like now in the last 20 years, who do the A's talk about? Like who is that Ricky Henderson?
They talk about the 04 season pretty much.
Yeah,
and that's about
Barry
it. Yeah.
Zito, Tim Hudson, like those dudes. I mean, Barry Zito won a World Series with the Giants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's just a bad look for those kind of teams. And as a Yankees fan, you know this, like the Yankees have like a gazillion dudes that you could fucking talk about forever.
Running out of jersey space out there.
Yeah.
Like literally running out of like retired numbers.
And that's that's what every team should look to do though. That's how they should run their franchise.
Yeah, and I think like the reason the Yankees struggle is because they got away from that too. Like the team that pisses me off the most in this situation is the Rays. Is the what?
The money ball.
No, look, Moneyball is what it is. It created a lot of opportunities in the game that wouldn't be there without it. So,
True.
it changed the game for a lot for the better in a lot of aspects. And I still think that Moneyball has to be played with some of the traditional aspects of baseball to really be successful. But I'll just say the team that pisses me off the most is the Rays, because they kind of get off easy as this team of like, oh, the poor Rays, they don't have any money, fans don't go. The people who own the Rays make millions of dollars a year off the Rays. Like we can't sit here and think like they don't, right? Like the whole thing about, oh, we'll split time in Canada and time in
Dude, that is
you
the
don't you don't
funniest.
do that unless you have money. Like I'm sorry, what, we have two
Yeah.
home stadiums? Like what? Like so every team, whether you're the Pirates, who I think had the worst home, I think they had the worst home attendance last year, was I think it was the
I mean,
Pirates.
I wouldn't be shocked, dude. They like stripped that team down, dude.
Yeah, I don't, I can't. What Brian Reynolds is a Pirate? Yeah, Brian Hayes. I don't even know who they have throwing anymore. Half the people I want to name are already on the Yankees.
Polanco's
So
like the or Gregory Polanco, right? That's like the only dude I can name on that team, dude. That's
yeah,
it.
he's the only one I think he's the only one that's been there more than 5 years, if we're gonna like count it that way.
It's
But
crazy.
but that team is profitable, right? Like that owner made a shit ton of money, and you can call it because it's the revenue share or whatever it is. But the point is, when that owner puts his head on the pillow at night to go to
He's
sleep,
sleeping.
that man's making money sleeping.
Yep.
Like with everything, everything that MLB owners do makes money. If you tell me, yo, just if you let me just sell my beer at the stadium at $30 a cup, like a lot, like some stadiums might do eventually.
I'll be
Like,
profitable, man.
yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
it's nuts.
Dude, it's crazy. Before we get out of here though, do you think that we get even remotely like half a season this year at this point? Like what's your honest opinion? Like your heart out of it, objectively, put your lawyer hat on right now. Like where are we?
So from a legal standpoint, like what I know is that money talks, right? So as much as we want to talk about the players wanting to really set something in stone for the next generation, as much as we want to say the owners, want to really stick to their guns, at the end of the day, an owner bringing home, let's say $20 million, is better than them bringing home nothing
Right.
for this year, right? For baseball, for the players, right? If you're telling me I'm going to make half of my $10 million salary, that's better than bringing zero. So what I think is eventually something does happen where the sides are gonna be like, you know what, we've lost too many games already. Now we're losing millions of dollars on a daily, on a weekly basis. Let's come up with something for the rest of this year.
Because it's not only
Um,
the owners though, too. Like, I mean, you're talking communities that are losing
yeah.
money, dude. And like some of these communities too, like people go to in the summer and like plan
Mm.
vacations to go see these teams.
Yeah.
Especially like the Yankees, for example. Like people travel to New York to go see Yankee Stadium. People
Yeah.
travel to Boston to go see Fenway Park. People travel to Chicago to go see Wrigley Field. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that that's the only reason why they go, but it's like a center of their vacation. You know what I mean? And like
I feel really bad for like the team like the Royals, where the Royals are middle of kind of nowhere, right? But they have a solid
that's
fan base.
disrespectful to Kansas City, bro.
Yeah, yeah, man.
They got great barbecue, by the way.
They do. No, they do. Trust me, man. I love the food. But the truth is, like, their fan base is strong. They want to show up. That's what they do, right? Like let's be honest. Like that's what you do out there. It's Kansas City Royal baseball, and then you have a shit ton of minor league teams out there, and that's what you spend your summer doing,
Yep.
right? Same thing with St. Louis. Like,
Yeah.
what goes on in the summer of St. Louis? They don't even have a basketball team, so to really like
They
follow up
listen
on.
to Nelly.
Yeah, so you have country grammar playing all summer long. But the truth is though, like those those things do affect the community, man. Like for all the hoopla about baseball losing its popularity and stuff like that, stadiums still make money, right? Fans still want to go to the games. Baseball is a really regional sport still,
Yep.
where if you're close to a stadium and you can afford to go, you're gonna go. Like I'm lucky enough where I live really close to Angel Stadium out here and Dodger Stadium, and whenever I go to any of those games, people are in the stands, right? Like,
Yep.
and the Angels are garbage, and people are still in the stands,
Yeah. People
right?
always go to Angel Stadium for sure.
Yeah. So like we're losing out on a lot. So if I was at the negotiating table and you tell me that this year's not important, Like, I don't care about this year. It's really about the long-term goal. We're not having a season this year. Straight up, we're not having a season this year. But if you're telling me, hey, look, it's important to me to have something this year. It's important for me to have for us to have some games this year. Then this does get resolved. I just don't know where they're at that point.
Because do you think that like the players that don't make millions of dollars, like once those paychecks stop rolling in, do you think at some point they're like, all right, we gotta play. Like I need to get paid. I got bills to pay.
So it's rough, man. So the way it works, and I was lucky enough growing up. I caught a lot of minor leaguers. I was a catcher, and I had the opportunity to catch a lot of minor league baseball players. The way it works is whenever they're not in season, usually their agencies pick up for them, right? So if you're Scott Boras' client, they'll put you up for the summer. Obviously, they're just taking that out of your contract when you get paid by the team at that point. So, I had guys from the DR, they were signed with Boras, and what they do is they come out here, whatever they spend on, the agency pays for them, right? That way they don't have to have jobs and stuff like that in the off season, and they keep training. They stay afloat, especially if they're rehabbing or something like that. The agency kind of picks all of that up with the expectation that as they get paid, the agency will get paid their expenses.
Interesting. Right? So I never knew that, dude.
Yeah. It's kind of fun, man. Trust me, like being a minor league baseball player, if you have an agency behind you. So if you were drafted mostly, right, or if you're a high level talent from in my experience from the Dominican Republic, right, like you had people taking care of you because you're an investment. So I don't think it will get to that point, right? I don't think it'll get to that point where guys are so hard up for money that they'll be like, whatever, let's just play.
Yeah, but how many of those guys like are there really? You know what I mean? Because we're talking a small percentage, dude.
You'll be surprised, right? So I had this one guy who never made the major leagues. He got injured. His name was Kelvin De La Cruz. He was a pitcher on the Indians, and he was a Scott Boras guy. He was a lefty through 97. So they were like, "Yo, this guy's gonna make it, right? Like, so let's invest in him." So he was in a situation where he was
like chilling. That movie, The Scout, huh?
Yeah. But like that guy was chilling, right? Like he was good. He had a big signing bonus to begin with, so he was cool. Then there's another guy I had who he was signed out of a Dominican academy, and his signing bonus was something like 200 G's.
Right.
His agency wasn't big enough to pay him stuff like that. So in the off season, what he did is he came back home he was from my town. He came home from my town and he was living with his parents, right, and stuff like that. Like he was, he had money in the bank and stuff like that, but he didn't have the kind of money that he could just chill for like a summer without doing anything either.
Right.
So
right.
like it does affect guys differently, because the major league players seem to really want to have the minor league players back in the situation. That might be what prolongs it. But again, like how long will that stand for, right? Like I know, Max Scherzer can spend the whole season and not do anything. But if you get to a guy like, I'm trying to think of a very low level player right now who hasn't gotten paid, like Miguel Rojas, right? Miguel Rojas gets paid $3 million a year, which is a lot of money still, right? But if you're saying he's gonna miss out on $3 million, that is a lot of money in the long term that he's gonna be missing out on, right? Because that's money that he can't really reinvest. That's money that he can't really do much, and he misses out on. So it does depend on where you're at in the spectrum.
It's crazy. It's gonna be interesting couple of weeks, dude. I think if we're gonna get a season, it's gonna be negotiated in a couple of weeks. I think if we get out of March, I think it's a wrap for the year, dude. For real.
I think so. Honestly, like if we have a season, something will happen within the next 15 days.
I agree, 100%.
I say March 15th deadline is really when I'd say, okay, there's an opening here to have a significant amount of games. I don't know if we do something like a 60-game season again, because we don't want to set that as a standard.
Nope.
Right? We did that for 1 year already, and as kooky and as fun as that might have been, I don't think anyone wants to do that for two times in the last 3 years.
Yep.
Like that's just not the way we want to roll. So it'll be interesting, man.
I agree. I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think the next 2 weeks are very, very telling for this situation, and I hope we get a season. If we don't, so be it. It is what it is. Like the players got to do what's best for them, man. But Daniel, thank you for joining me tonight.
Yeah, no problem, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, this was fun, dude. Make sure to go follow him at @D_Lopez MBE on Twitter. You can catch him on the Diamond Talk podcast on the SSAW network. If you're following along with us, you're probably watching this in SSAW, by the way. So you probably already heard him on his podcast, but my man does a great work in baseball, dude. Literally one of the most knowledgeable baseball dudes I know. So thank you, brother, for joining me.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
Nah, for real, dude. You know your shit, dude. And the fact that we agree means you know your shit, you know. I'm just joking. All right, y'all. We will catch y'all later. Thank you. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Jordan Rules TSP. We'll see y'all later. Peace.